Folks, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in salary cap trouble, and in this video today, I thought it would be a good idea to take a look at how they can possibly remedy these situations to get cap compliant before the start of the new league year. I am not alone in this video. Joining me, as always, a lot on this channel is my colleague from BucsNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish, also the co-host of the Cannon Fire podcast and the host of the Real to Real podcast as well. Evan, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on here.
Of course, no problem. So, Evan, let's talk about this because right now things are not necessarily great regarding the Buccaneers salary cap situation with the retirement of Tom Brady. It is now another cap hit of $35 million added on to the Buccaneers salary cap situation, which means at this time the Buccaneers have a cap total of $55 million over the cap. Evan, I think it's safe to say that that is not a very good situation to be in. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's safe to say that that's certainly not where you want to be because it's just more issues that you have to tackle, and you're going to have trouble re-signing your own free agents. Doesn't mean you won't be able to re-sign any of them, but you're going to have more trouble bringing a lot of your guys back and also adding pieces. So, being it's not the end of the world because there are tons of ways to create cap space as we're going to discuss, but definitely not a good thing.
Yeah, you mentioned it there, right? It's not good. To be fair, me and you are not great at the mathematics. We're not mathematicians, I guess you could
Certainly
say.
not.
We're not, but me and you both know that negative 55 million, yeah, that's not a good number to have. But as you said, there are ways that the Buccaneers can get cap compliant. And the first way that I want to look at is restructuring. So this is, I would say, the best things that the Buccaneers can do in terms of not losing players or losing talent on their football team, Evan. I think that is a safe thing to say. So whenever you look at that first road that the Buccaneers can take to free up some cap space, what are some restructures that pop into your mind as potential options for the Bucs, or possibly even contract extensions as well that the Buccaneers can give certain guys?
Well, if you're looking at contract extensions, I think there's only really one name that makes the most sense for a contract extension, and that's Mike Evans. His contract is due to be up after this coming season, so it would be make a lot of sense to potentially add another year or two onto that contract. That way, you're able to spread out his cap hit. Right now, his current 2023 cap hit is projected to be $23.6 million. If you sign to the extension, you're able to stretch that dollar figure out. So you can bring that down, maybe save you close to $10 million there on the cap this season. So you're able to bring that down. And because it looked like, yes, the Bucs are in a cap crunch this year, but next year their total cap space projected is 83 million, and in 2025 it's 229 million. So you can borrow essentially from those years by spreading out that cap hit for an extension with a guy like Mike Evans, who, I think you plan for him to stick around. I don't think there's any doubt that he's going to be in Tampa. As far as restructures, I mean, Chris Godwin could be a restructure candidate. He's another guy who is a pretty good candidate to stay in Tampa Bay long term. Vita Vea is another one that could be restructured. So I think if you're looking at those three, I think those make a lot of sense. You could restructure a guy like Shaq Barrett.
Mm-hmm.
However, that would be pushing more money down the line. And with Barrett, being over 30 years old, coming off a major injury, I'm not entirely sure if you want to do that. So, we'll have to wait and see what they decide to do. They don't have to do every restructure, but there's a lot of restructuring that they can do for sure.
Yeah, whenever I look at those names, obviously Chris Godwin, Mike Evans come to mind. I think that Shaq Barrett is a legitimate option as well. Maybe a guy like Carlton Davis. I don't really know how that would necessarily work considering he has 2 years left on his deal. But I do
Yeah, it,
think
it definitely could. It definitely could.
yeah, but I do think that there are some restructures that they could get done. Maybe a guy like Ryan Jensen. I don't necessarily know how it works with that either. But for people saying like, oh, they're going to trade, this, Evan. There's been rumors like, oh, they're going to trade Mike Evans to free up cap space and tank. Folks, do you know the dead cap number to what Mike Evans' contract is? It's 21 million. So Evan, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's safe to say, right?
Yeah. Unless the Bucs are getting an offer that makes it worth it, because everybody has a price. I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, trading Mike Evans makes very little sense for a team right now that is going to need all the cap space that it can get.
Yeah, and that is actually the next avenue I want to take a look at is trading or releasing players. Now that's the bit grittier side of this. NFL is a business type of mentality there. Look, at the end of the day, the Buccaneers may have to move on from some guys, Evan. It just is the nature of the beast. And whenever you look at some of these dead cap numbers compared to what the cap hit is, there are a couple of names that strike out that have already been talked about recently. Guys like Donovan Smith. He has a $17.9 million cap hit this year, which is good for 7.87% of the Buccaneers' total cap this year. And he only has a little under $8 million in dead cap. So if the Buccaneers move on from him, they could save around $10 million, Evan. You then also look at guys like Russell Gage, $12 million cap hit, $9 million dead cap. They could save a couple of $1 million there, as well as some other guys, Shaq Mason, although I don't think he's going to be necessarily going anywhere. Cam Brate could also be an option to save a couple of $1 million. Ryan Suckup may be a big name thrown in there as well. What do you think about that idea of some potential cuts, some potential cap casualties? Of course, Leonard Fournette is another name that has been brought up a lot as well. $8.4 million cap hit with $5 million in dead cap. What are your thoughts on those types of moves that could possibly be made?
Yeah, I think when you're looking at it, and you're looking at the Bucks cap situation, those ones make the most sense. I would think. I would say, Smith, Fournette, Brayton, Suckup being the main four. I think, and that's not to say all four of them are going to be cut. But because if you cut them, you also got to replace them. So there's definitely there's a lot of downside. There is some downside to that. It's not just like, oh you get the cap space. Oh, you also got to replace the player too. If they cut Ryan Suckup, they're going to be looking for a kicker. If they cut Donovan Smith, they're going to be looking for a starting left tackle. Like that's not easy. If they cut Russell Gage, you could be looking for another receiver. So you have to be mindful with these cuts that it's not just as simple as, oh, getting rid of this player. No, because you have to replace the player. So I do think those guys could be, and I think you will see some cuts because, quite frankly, the NFL is a business, and you got to make tough decisions. And right now, with the position the Buccaneers are in, they are going to have to make tough decisions. And with a guy like Tom Brady, not being back, I think it makes it more likely a guy like Leonard Fournette ends up going. Whereas if Brady returned, I think Brady would have liked Fournette back. Now that Brady's not here, I do think that Fournette's chances of being cut do go up. Guys like Cam Brate and Ryan Suckup, I think it was pretty likely either way that they were going to be moving on. But I do think that a name like Fournette, a name like Donovan Smith could make a lot of sense as the Buccaneers look to get out of this mess here.
And look, I will look into the idea of making more separate videos for guys like obviously Donovan Smith and Leonard Fournette and the pros and cons to moving on from those guys, even maybe a guy like Russell Gage as well. But Evan, to kind of put a little bit of a bow here on this video, final thoughts on the Buccaneers getting cap compliant. What do you see as like the best path here? Do you see them just working on doing restructures, just trying to cut some guys and move on from some contracts, or maybe a little bit of a mix of both in terms of the Buccaneers getting under that cap number and also maybe giving themselves a little bit of wiggle room to re-sign some guys and maybe bring in some new guys as well at the start of the new league year?
Well, yeah, the unfortunate thing with the way the Bucks are, they're going to have to do both. They're not really going to have a choice. They're probably going to have to make some cuts, and they are probably going to have to make some restructures, and that includes an extension, to a guy like Mike Evans. An extension is far more likely than a trade when we're talking about Mike Evans, folks.
Yep.
So I do think that you could see that, and they're going to need to do a lot of it. Like they are going to need to do a lot of it. They almost got some help with Tom Brady because if he had filed himself as like they could have had it as a post June 1 move, which would have saved about 24 million. So that would have been a pretty nice boost. It would have stretched out the cap hit to next year as well. But now it appears that while it's not set in stone, it does appear the most likely thing is that they are going to be eating all that 35 million. So yeah, I mean they're going to make a lot of tough decisions, and just want to remind folks that uh, the Buccaneers will be cap compliant to start the season. Like they will. I mean, to start the new league year, I should say, they will make the restructures and the cuts because they have to, because they literally have to. So there is no other option. It is an NFL rule that all teams must be cap compliant. So that is going to happen. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, so I obviously that has to happen, right? It's not a matter of, oh, will they get cap compliant? No, they literally have to. They literally have to. And it's going to be interesting to see what ways they do that. And of course, we'll be covering that here on the channel. Evan's going to be covering it over at the Cannon Fire podcast. There's going to be a lot of different things going on, folks. It's going to be a very busy month of February, in my opinion. A lot of different things are going to be going on. So let's just kind of buckle up because the Buccaneers have a lot of moves in their future to get to this salary cap compliancy and get out of the salary cap trouble that they are in. Evan, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this video. Folks, for those watching this video, go check out Evan's work over at BucsNation.com. Also, go check out his stuff on the Cannon Fire podcast, where they really should upload a little bit more, and also the Reel to Reel podcast as well, where I am a part of it. So definitely go check all of those works out. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed. And as always, folks, we will see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.